Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to part 3 of my narration for Farpoint. Chapter 8, Light in the Darkness. Ryan had worked as a park ranger going on 13 years at this point. He had seen it all during his time on the job. Missing hikers, bear attacks, you name it. That night was just like any other at Etowah Ranger Station. The sun had recently set, and the sky was a beautiful purplish red. Its dimming rays reflected through the front windows of the ranger station. Ryan had a cup of coffee in one hand and a book in the other. His morning ritual was for as long as he can remember. He had actually been reading a horror book as of late. It was a bunch of made-up crap, but was a fun read for sure. Not much had happened that day, no lost hikers to speak of. The bears were minding their own business, nothing but morning coffee and a little sunshine. Ryan's mind flooded with thoughts as he drifted away slowly. He thought about his son's concert coming up. His son was actually a pretty good guitarist. Having started his own blues rock band, the first gig was the next day. While Ryan was disconnected from the music world, he was incredibly proud of his son's achievement. After all, every parent should do whatever they can to support their child's dreams. His shopping list came to mind as well. Deli meat, eggs, and beer, he thought. Especially the beer. And of course he couldn't wait to see his wife again. They had been together since high school. She was the love of his life to say the least, and had been on a business trip for the past week. Just then his radio came to life. "Hey Ryan, you copy?" "Yeah, go ahead, Tom. Some hikers have reported strange noises coming from the old power plant. Think you could check that out?" Ugh, Ryan thought. I was getting to the best part of the book. Picking back up the radio, he replied, "Sure can, Tom. I'll head out as soon as possible." Respectfully, Ryan set down his book and got up from the table. As he exited the station, he grabbed the flashlight as it was now pitch black outside. "Geez, couldn't they have thought of this in the morning?" he grumbled. The light from the torch glistened in the moonlight. As he approached his truck, the beams of light reflected brightly. He winced from its intense glare and set off for the power plant. The power plant was about a 25-minute drive from the station. Once run by the Farpoint Electric Company, it supplied most of the town's power at one point, a feat it proudly boasted on the company logo. However, around 20 years prior, the company had gone bankrupt, shutting down the plant. Along with the decay of time, the plant had turned into a ghost town. While power plants were not usual fare for park rangers, the one in Farpoint was located smack dab in the middle of Etowah Forest. When the local police station became overburdened, they often deferred lesser stuff to other services. With multiple murders in the past few weeks alone, Ryan's boss figured it was the least they could do to help out. On the way, Ryan flipped on the local classic rock station Farpoint Rocks. He was pleasantly surprised when his son's band, Reverend John and the Rascals, were playing. Immediately recognizing his son's voice, he thought to himself that the song wasn't that bad. Just as the band's top song was finishing, he began a drive through Etowah Forest. There was something unsettling about Etowah Forest. The locals did their best to avoid it at all costs, and only when his job required it did Ryan leave the safety of the station. He loved being in the woods, but this forest left him with a sense of unease every time he entered it. Yet he could never bring himself to relocate to a different station. The cool breeze in the air made for a pleasant drive. Raccoons communed amongst themselves, and a few chipmunks tempted fate by running past Ryan's oncoming truck. After another several minutes, the power plant finally came into view. Ryan pulled into the parking lot and noticed that several of the plant's windows had been shattered. Moss littered the walls as Etowah Forest fought to consume the building from the outside. A once great company now turned into an empty husk. Plastered on the center of the building was the Bright Falls Electric Company logo. A tall lighthouse with a lightning bolt coming out of it. Ryan always thought the logo looked pretty cool. Several old company trucks dotted the parking lot as well. Upon closer inspection, time had not treated them any better. The seats were rotten and torn apart. There was even a hole in the floor of one from water. Well, on the plus side, there isn't any screaming or anything going on right now, Ryan thought to himself. The last thing I need is to run into a crazy serial killer or something. He made his way to the front entrance of the plant, and noticed a strange sight. One of the windows glowed eerily in the dark of the night. A strange sight indeed in an abandoned power plant. While not immediately an ominous sight, Ryan's time on the job had taught him better. Officially on edge, Ryan carefully opened the power plant's door. He made sure to draw his 9mm pistol beforehand. The lobby of the power plant looked ancient. Thick layers of dust coated every object within sight. A few chairs were stacked in the corner, which made them a haven for cobwebs. In the room's center stood a large wooden counter with an outdated computer sitting atop it. "Man, this thing hasn't been turned on in ages," Ryan said in awe. Above the preceding doors stood the company's slogan, "Bringing light to a dark world." It was cheesy, but made the company's intentions quite clear. Upon entering through the main door, the building opened up into a large room. Rows of old transformers lined the room. Years of disuse had caught up to the machines. Rust covered much of the machine's surface, and thick pools of oil could be seen seeping from many of them. Ryan's boots left dark impressions in his wake. The light of his flashlight was instantly suffocated by the surrounding darkness, and it did little to illuminate the room. Unsurprisingly on edge from his current situation, the sudden noise of movement in the room caused him to jolt upright. The hairs on the back of his head stood up. That terrifying feeling of being watched bubbled over around him. Madly swinging his flashlight around the room, a wave of relief came over Ryan when he realized it was just a raccoon. After having a good chuckle with himself, Ryan finally reached the stairs that led to the upper section of the plant. "Please don't be haunted," he thought to himself. The first few floors upstairs were nothing out of the ordinary. A mouse nest here and a cobweb there. But as he approached the end of the hallway, a figure darted out from amidst the shadows. Immediately it disappeared on the other end of the room. "Am I going crazy?" Ryan asked understandably. Reaching the doorway, he heard a loud crash from inside the room. He rushed in and scanned each corner of the room. His frantic searching continued for several seconds. Nothing. The room was completely empty. What is going on here? At that moment, Ryan felt something grabbing him on the shoulder. Kicking and screaming frantically, he was dragged into the dark. Chapter 9. Whiskey Dreams. The pressure of the previous few nights had begun to take their toll on Jack. This case continued to frustrate him. He wasn't any close to solving it. Or at least he thought. On his desk sat a nearly empty bottle of liquor. Tennessee Crack was the brand's namesake, and the name suited it to say the least. Once you started pouring, it was hard to stop. Jack lay passed out on his desk with his face planted firmly on the journal that he was supposed to be reading. Drops of drool fell from his mouth and onto the floor. He was the spinning image of drunkenness. Alcohol had been known to cause strong dreams when consumed. For Jack, this night was no exception. In his dream, he was back in his old house. He awoke in the morning to hear the sweet sound of his wife's voice. "Breakfast is ready, Jack," she said in a calm, bubbly demeanor. "I'll be right down, dear, thanks." Jack slowly got dressed and stumbled down the stairs. A combination of an early morning and a lack of caffeine caused his head to ache. He promptly rested his palm on his forehead. A loud groan erupted from inside him. Upon entering the kitchen, he was greeted by the sight of his beautiful wife in a dress. A wonderful floral pattern adorned the dark blue silk of its fabric. Her crimson red hair shimmered in the morning light, in sharp contrast to the dress itself. It was enough to make any man blush. "Well, hello, beautiful," Jack said with a grin. "Good morning, Jack. Hope you're in the mood for waffles." Jack practically jumped with joy. "I'm always in the mood for waffles. How did you know?" The smell of which radiated throughout the morning air and caused Jack's mouth to water uncontrollably. "So, Jack, are you ready to use that vacation time?" his wife asked gently. "I'm thinking of the Bahamas, someplace warm and far away from Maine." "Not yet, honey. You know I'm working on a big case, right?" A hiker had recently gone missing in the forest near the Indian reservation on the west side. It wasn't looking like they could find the man anytime soon. Jack's wife fired back with sarcasm. You know, it would be nice if you could go one day without saving somebody. Is that too selfish of me to ask? As soon as I finish this case, I promise I'll take some time off. He was just trying to please his wife, though. He was a workaholic, and time off did not suit him well. Besides, the hiker wasn't going to find himself. He knew his wife was irked by the constant cases, but there was always a case. And if he didn't have some sort of goal to achieve, he was miserable. After finishing his morning meal and saying goodbye to his wife, Jack set out for work. She wished him a happy day as she always did. Life was great, it seemed. That is until around 5 that evening, when things took a turn for the worst. He had been seated at his desk since the day had been unusually quiet. There was no leads as to where the hiker's whereabouts. A box of donuts from the local Happy Rings sat to his right. All the strawberry frosted ones were gone. Jack's favorite kind. Out of the corner of his eye, Jack saw Ray rush over. Hey Jack, I just got a call about screams coming from your property, Ray frantically said. Your neighbors just called it in. Did they say what happened? Jack replied shakily. No, just that they heard the screams. Loud screams. Jack rushed out of the police station. His car struggled to keep up with him as he accelerated. The siren atop his car rang throughout the town, and people emerged from their homes to observe the commotion. After all, Farpoint was a fairly quiet town. Jack arrived home after a modest drive. He lived on a farm several miles outside the town that was nestled on 20 acres of beautiful land. It was any man's dream home. A beautiful red farmstead stood in the middle of the property. A tall barn that housed cattle and horses stood nearby. In the background stood both an imposing mountain and forest. However, Jack knew something was off immediately. The door to Jack's home had been torn off at the hinges. Deep claw marks had been engraved into the front of the door. I've never seen anything like this, Jack yelled loudly. Rushing in through the door, he frantically began to look around. The walls of the house had deep claw marks as far as the eyes could see. Everything was a mess, as if a bull had rampaged through it. Jack immediately called for backup. This was no bear attack. His heart sank as he made his way forward. The doorway of the kitchen came into view. A thick pool of blood ran into the kitchen. It looked as though something had been dragged through it. One of the light fixtures had been completely torn from the wall. What was left of his wife's body could be seen in the corner of the room. She had been torn to bits. Her left leg had been completely chewed off, and deep claw marks could be seen all over her body. Clutched in her left palm was a photo of her and Jack. The very sight made Jack sick to his stomach. The walls had writing smeared with blood, his wife's blood. Like father, like son, all you love undone. Soon after, several other police officers arrived. They did their best to comfort the disturbed detective. However, words could do little at that point. His wife's murder and his father's were connected. Something was hunting Jack's entire family. Chapter 10. Uncle Sam. November 15th, 1864. I awoke suddenly, and my head felt as though it had been torn from my body. The hangover I was dealing with had the power of 1,000 suns. Blast it, I am never drinking again. I knew that resolution wouldn't survive the day, however. The previous night had been spent celebrating our victory over the Yanks. We had managed to ambush them under the cover of night, and if there was one thing I was good at, it was drinking. Although I was pretty good at shooting people, too. As I slowly got up in a dazed confusion, a sudden commotion woke me from my trance. Captain Barker, sir, the Yanks have us surrounded. They caught us with our pants down, literally, said a visibly frightened private. What do you mean they surrounded us? Who did we have on patrol, I questioned. Nobody, sir. Everyone was partying. You fools! Grabbing my musket from the side of my bed, I rushed outside the tent. Even on a good day, us Confederates were woefully unequipped. My unit was mostly stuck with muzzle loaders. Meanwhile, the North had percussion and lever-action rifles. To make matters worse, they always seemed to have more men. That being said, I was never one to back down from a fight. It was of little use, however. Most of my unit was still asleep. Those that were up looked confused in their drunken haze. We did our best to form a formation around the outskirts of our camp. I looked up to see rows upon rows of blue. "Oh no," I shouted, "they're everywhere. Fire at will, boys." The Union troops soon returned with fire of their own. Private Eskowitz took a bullet to the throat and promptly slumped over. Sergeant Williams followed by taking iron to the skull. Corporal Hollins did his best to hold the end of the line. However, he was soon forced to retreat. We did our best, but the Yanks soon overwhelmed our position. At that exact moment, the Yanks began a cavalry charge. Holding their sabers high in the morning sky, they charged. The sight of steel reflecting the sun still haunts me to this day. The man next to me, whose name escapes me, was beheaded before my eyes. I'll never forget that sight, how the blood ran down the saber, and the bright metal finish flashed a dark red. "Retreat! Retreat!" I yelled at the top of my lungs. But it was no use, for the Yanks had us completely surrounded. As we huddled in the center of the camp, they picked us off one by one, like a pack of wolves hunts its prey. Finally, in one of the worst moments of my short life, I dropped my rifle. I ordered the rest of my unit to do the same. There was no sense in losing any more men. The Union was usually pretty charitable anyway. A tall man rode in on his black horse. I instantly recognized his general insignia. "General Sherman, indeed," I muttered to myself. He rode to the center of camp before addressing us. "You rebels fight like drunken fools. Drunken fools get put to the sword. All of the South will burn. Mark my words." He ordered what remained of my men to be rounded up. I watched every last one die before my eyes. "What is your name, Captain?" Sherman asked. I looked at him and my expression darkened. I could feel the rage burning inside of me. "None of your concern, scum." The general let out a loud laugh, and his whole unit soon followed. "Ah, you Southerners never change." Then he said something that still bothers me to this day. "We're all just pawns in a game neither of us understand, but it's a game I intend on winning. Take this letter and run back to your generals. Let them know that Sherman's march knocks on their doorstep." Despite all that had transpired, I didn't feel like dying that day, and I reluctantly accepted the letter. I tucked it away, and as I ran from the camp, I saw the flames ignite behind me. November 16th, 1864. I had promptly taken shelter in an abandoned cellar. The house above had become a victim of Sherman's bloody march. Acre upon acre now sat destroyed, consumed by the fires of war. My home burns as a cower in a basement. But what else is there to do? Ever since that day, something has changed. I now see shadows in the corner of my eyes. Figures move around me and disappear in the blink of an eye. I feel as though I'm being watched. Color fades from existence on the occasion, and the sounds of the world seem to stop. I am not sure if this is from an injury I received, or I could be going insane. All I know is that something seems off. November 17th, 1864. I woke suddenly from the strangest of dreams. I saw a portal, and through it stood a land of fire. Walls of flames consumed every inch. Strange beings inhabited the world in a constant torment. Their skin burned in the heat, and they had to change form to stay alive. They shed their skin much like a snake. Their eyes, too. There was so much hate inside of them, a lifetime of misery. Lava poured from the cracks in the ground and flowed much like a river. Tall stone buildings had been carved into the sides of several mountains. They were most likely places that escaped the bitter heat. All I know is that it was a place of nightmares. I brushed it off the best that I could. Today I took stock of my surroundings. I would have to leave soon, unfortunately. I wanted to make sure, though, that I had supplies for the journey. Thankfully, there were still some supplies left. 5 cans of beans and a bag of rice, to my surprise. There was even an old jelly jar. Not much, but it was enough to survive. I managed to procure an old flintlock pistol during my travels. It wasn't much, but it would keep me alive. And with that, I packed my rucksack and left the house. I didn't know where to go or what to do. All I knew was that the city of Atlanta was the last place I wanted to be. Chapter 11. Brave New World. Ryan awoke after some time. Looking up slowly, his head felt as if a brick had been smashed upon it. Where am I? Was his first thought. Looking around, it appeared as if he was on a tropical beach. Hawaii, or maybe the Caribbean. Ryan slowly trotted along the side of the beach. Each of his footprints left sizable impressions in the sand behind him. Scattered along the shore was various objects. A decayed cardboard shipping box and some sort of wooden plank. Even an old volleyball. Great, well at least I have a friend now, he chuckled. In the sand beneath him he noticed his flashlight half buried. However, upon closer inspection, water had completely destroyed the inside of it. Ryan promptly chucked it into the ocean with anger. Useless, he declared. How in the world did I end up on a tropical island? Up ahead lay a grove of palm trees. Coconuts dotted the ground beneath. Out of frustration, Ryan kicked one of them like a soccer ball. The coconut skipped across the water and made a loud splash. He continued inland to try and find higher elevation. A high vantage point, he reckoned, might help him figure out just where he was. The trek up the nearby hill was a fairly arduous task. However, upon reaching the top, Ryan was shocked by what he saw. He was on a tropical island that was surrounded on both sides by water. A few miles away he could see some sort of structure. It did not appear earthly, but he figured that it had to do with how far away it was. Despite this, several miles of jungle lay between him and said structure. It was going to be quite the hike. Ryan made his way down the hill, but as he did, it began to pour. Seriously, he yelled. Today was not going well for him. His first ever jungle expedition began without much of a hitch. The fauna of the island caught his eye. He had seen a strange snake that glowed bright green, and light seemed to emanate from within its body. So brightly, in fact, that it hurt Ryan's eyes to even look at it. It almost looked radioactive. As if it was from like an old sci-fi movie. A bird swooped overhead, but rather than a normal call of a bird, a deep roar emitted from its mouth. This caught Ryan off guard, and caused him to nearly trip over a nearby log. I'm no longer on Earth anymore, Ryan thought. As he continued through the jungle, Ryan could see a small clearing up ahead. As he neared that clearing, he could tell that it was a small stream. While he hadn't noticed it before, Ryan was clearly dehydrated. The thought of water overcame him, and he rushed to the stream. To his disappointment, though, the water in the stream seemed to glow bright green, just like the animals he had come across. The last thing he wanted to do was glow green himself. Fighting the sense of thirst that was now clawing at his brain, Ryan continued on. He had to make it to that structure in order to figure out where he even was. He found several berry bushes on his way. However, those too glowed bright green. It was as if the entire planet was radioactive. Great, now I'm gonna die of cancer if something else doesn't kill me first, Ryan huffed to himself. The adrenaline coursing through Ryan's blood kept him going for much longer than one would think. Dehydration had soon begun to take its toll. He had been sweating profusely for some time, thanks in no part to the surrounding jungle's heat. Eventually, he began to stumble as if he was drunk. His head pounded uncontrollably, and after some time he passed out. His body hit the ground with a loud thud. After some time, Ryan awoke with his vision blurred. Once his senses returned, he surveyed his surroundings. He was trapped in a strange cylindrical room. The ceiling went up for hundreds of feet. This place is huge, he thought to himself. Just as he began to move, a voice rang out in his ears. Finally, how great of you to join us, Ryan. This caught Ryan off guard. Who are you and where am I? Ryan shot back. The being in question completely ignored Ryan's questions. We've been waiting for you for some time now. A feast awaits you in the next room. A door suddenly appeared in front of Ryan. With nothing else to do, he cautiously made his way through the mysterious door. What he saw shocked him. The door opened into a huge dining hall. Rows upon rows of food lined its tables. A roasted pig, pizza, hamburgers, and more exotic meals to be had. Giant chandeliers hung from its grand ceilings. The majestic crystals adorned to it reflected light down upon the room, a truly magnificent sight to behold. Silverware appeared to be made from both gold and silver. Meanwhile, the chairs were covered in the finest of leather. Whoever lived here must have been rich. Ryan's stomach began to scream at the sight of food. He hadn't eaten in what felt like ages. The mysterious voice returned at that exact moment. "Go ahead, Ryan. Eat as much as you'd like." He simply couldn't help himself. He began to dig into the feast before him. Not unlike a wolf, he devoured his prey with blind fury. After some time, Ryan was finally full. A new door appeared before him, followed by the same voice. "Go ahead, Ryan. See all the wonders that Terra Grigia has in store." The next room had large glass panels stretching from wall to wall. Before him was a vast city unlike anything he had ever seen. Tall skyscrapers stretched toward the sky. Monoliths stood amidst the night sky, and each one displayed billboards of companies Ryan had never even heard of. Skybound Industries, Space Corps, and especially Galaxy First. Flying cars flew past at incredible speeds, makes and models that were completely unearthly in appearance. They appeared to be transporting strange alien-like creatures to unknown destinations. It was like something out of a science fiction movie. "Where am I?" Ryan asked the voice. "This is Terra Grigia, the jewel of the galaxy. Consider yourself honored, as not many humans get to witness this very sight. At least not from this side of the glass." At that moment, a robed figure entered the room behind Ryan. "My name is Baraxis. As the leader of Terra Grigia, it is an honor to meet you." Ryan was caught off guard by the unusual amount of pleasantries. Yeah, it's great to meet you too, but why am I really here?" It was at that moment that Ryan noticed the rows of humans entering the city. Except that they were all walking slowly in unison. After a second, Ryan realized that the horde of people were chained together. The sight sent shivers down his spine. These people were being kidnapped and enslaved. The strange creature cracked a large grin. As he did so, his long, sharp claws tapped on the glass before him. "Truth is, we just needed somebody to lure out the human named Jack. He is the last of his kind, an unfortunate roadblock to the final solution." "Wait, who's Jack?" Ryan asked. "And what do you mean by final solution?" The creature ignored Ryan's questions. "There's nothing special about you at all, other than your connection to Farpoint. I just wanted you to have a fairly dignified death." "What?" Ryan yelled. His hands began to tremble with fear. Sweat permeated his forehead as his body's fight-or-flight reaction kicked in. Ryan promptly dashed for the door. It was then that a heavily armored squad of troops entered through the door. Hey, what's up, guys? Hope you liked part 3 of my narration for my novel Farpoint. A like and subscribe helps out a whole lot, and stay tuned for part 4.